Everyone's in, I will jump right in with housekeeping remarks, and then we'll begin. So this webinar will be recorded and the slides will be shared. So please don't worry about taking down intense notes. You'll be getting an automated follow-up email from the Zoom platform 24 hours from the end of this webinar. If for some reason you registered last minute or you want to register with a different email address, let us know afterwards. We'll share our contact information. We'll be very happy to make sure we get that to you directly to your inbox. With regards to the agenda or the event structure, we have firstly a high-level welcome from Dr. Martin Penny, the head of the communication unit at the European Research Council Executive Agency. We will also hear from the Norwegian National Contact Point, or NCP, for ERC Grants, Per Magnus Kommandantvold, who will both give a long presentation, but then also hold a Q&A session. But within this overall presentation, we have a very exciting format where we have 3 current ERC starting grantees who are based in 3 different European countries. And Feljana Stathis, who is co-hosting this with us today of MSKCC, will moderate miniature panels within the overall presentation to hear the experience, feedback, and recommendations from these current grantees, 2 of whom are on your screen right now. So as a quick reminder, we'll take questions at the end of the session. So please, let's use the chat box for any technical problems you need to report to us. But we will have that Q&A box where you can submit your questions. You should be able to vote other questions that you want to see answered. We'll get to those both by writing out some answers and then addressing them live towards the end. But if you ask any questions in the chat, I'll just ask you to please copy and paste in the Q&A box. And I encourage you to really hold your questions towards the end. Because Per Magnus and the colleagues are so used to many of the common questions that I think that the presentation should preempt a lot of them. So towards the end, we expect a lot of questions to come in and we'll do our best to answer those live. So with that said, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Martin Penny of the European Research Council Executive Agency. Dr. Penny, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Jackson. And let me share my screen to start off with. So the slides are up and you can already see my presentation. So hopefully you should see the slides coming up now. As Jackson said, my name is Martin Penny. I'm the head of communication for the European Research Council Executive Agency based in Brussels. The slides are still coming up, but first of all, let me thank EURAXESS for organizing this webinar and our colleagues also from the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I think it's a very interesting timing for this webinar, both in terms of the opportunities that the ERC has offered for many years, which I think are of relevance to many of you, in fact, all of you here in the audience today, but also very timely because, as you may have seen yesterday, there was an event launching what we've called Choose Europe for Science. And it was an event which was held in Paris. You may have seen the speeches by President Ursula von der Leyen, who's the president of the European Commission, and President Macron, the president of France. I won't talk a lot about the Choose Europe for Science campaign. You'll see there's a new website and you'll see more information on that, on this new campaign, which will be coming out over the following weeks and months. But as the President von der Leyen announced yesterday, this will include, on top of the investment that we already have from the framework program, which is a substantial budget of over 90 billion euros, an extra 500 million investment, which will include new super grants under the European Research Council, which we're still working, our scientific council is working out the details of in terms of how they will be put in place. Enhanced support for early career researchers under the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, but also a commitment to ensure scientific freedom and academic freedom, to enshrine academic freedom into law at the European level. Also to provide new actions to improve the pathways from breakthrough science so that you can accelerate innovation to the market, and to set out the opportunities that Europe offers as a global science hub. So that's just an introduction to share the scene of things which happened just yesterday with this conference in Paris, and you'll hear more about this campaign. But the objective of today is really to talk to you about the opportunities through the ERC grants. And there, one of the things which colleague Per Magnus and the other speakers will talk you through is that there are opportunities. If you're a researcher working in any field of any nationality, there are opportunities for you. So it's very good that you've tuned into this webinar. It's exactly at the right time. The ERC offers opportunities for you. They are grants for which are longer term in any area of research, They're all what we call bottom-up grants. And by that, I mean, we do not have any predefined priorities. Any area of research is eligible to apply. And of course, our grants are selected by international peer review. What makes the ERC a little different, and it was something which was highlighted by President van der Leyen yesterday, is it's a very different type of science organization. It's run by scientists for scientists. And so the governance of the agency to set out our strategy for how we fund, how our grants are evaluated, how once they're awarded, they are managed, and how our grantees report is set out by this independent scientific council. And they have complete full authority in that respect. Us, the bureaucrats, if you will, in Brussels, we in the executive agency implement this strategy which the scientific council has put forward. So it's a very different type of organization. And you'll see that that helps on enormously in making things simple. So our grants, as you see on the screen, have one evaluation criterion. It's all about excellence. So really, we're talking about individual researchers working with a host institution where you need to be at least 50% of your time in an EU member state or a country associated to the program. And Per Magnus will explain those terms if you don't know what they mean. And it's as simple as that in all areas of research. In addition, when you're looking at opportunities for researchers who are currently based outside of the member states currently, you may have also seen an announcement that we have increased startup funding which is available. So the ERC from its very outset has recognized that if you're moving to Europe to set up a new research group, you may need additional funding for equipment, for resources. And this has always been between 500,000 and €1 million. It's been standard at €1 million now for a few years. The Scientific Council has now increased this to €2 million. Let me be clear, this is not about relocation costs. It's not personal costs. This is additional startup funding for you in terms of setting up your research group. One of the things which people perhaps know less, is the ERC grants allow for dual appointments. That is, you can maybe keep an affiliation with your home institute outside of Europe. You need to spend at least 50% of your time in Europe. Now, when you're starting your academic career, that may be more challenging, but for those of you who are more advanced and maybe have several postdocs already in a group, this could be an option for you to have this dual affiliation. It's also important to note that team members can be based anywhere outside of Europe. I won't talk about the synergy grants in any great detail. I'm not sure if Per Magnus will cover them, but one of the things which is there is also synergy grants. There are opportunities for researchers from anywhere in the world to be actually part of the grant and no need to move to Europe for that. So I hope this has whetted your appetite in terms of the webinar. It's an exciting time in terms of new opportunities. There are opportunities for all of you, irrespective of where you're currently based and the area of research you're working in. Now, one of the key things which I hope you'll get from this webinar is there's a lot of support and advice and guidance for you when you're making applications. And let me just give you a flavor of a couple of those which we offer. You'll have these slides sent to you by our colleagues in EURAXESS afterwards. So when I say click here to watch, you'll be able to click on the slides when you receive them. But on the ERC YouTube channel, you'll find ERC classes where the staff, my colleagues from the executive agency, take you through and guide you through the application process, how the applications are structured, what's written where, and through also the evaluation process. And those are very good to guide you through, and you can understand exactly all of the steps of the process. So those are one of the key sources of guidance which I would really highlight for you. In addition, Per Magnus will give you the details of all of the other supports and guidance which you can get, both in terms of national contact points and also all the different documents. But let me just finish with one slide in terms of when you're looking for more information on the whole process. You have our website here. You can also follow us on social media in terms of the different channels that we have available. So on LinkedIn, on Blue Sky, through YouTube, through X, through Facebook. And one of the things I'd like to highlight is in particular our WhatsApp channel. which gives you very targeted information just on opportunities that are available to you and the outcomes of calls. So it's really targeted information. If you're looking for things short and simple, then I'd advise you to sign up for our WhatsApp channel, and we can send details of how you can do that, or you can scan the QR code on screen. So that's my scene setter. Very excited to see so many of you online, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the speakers and this webinar today. So thank you very much for attending, and I will stop here then, Jackson, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Penny. I think with that, we're very pleased to have Brussels, to have the European Research Council Executive Agency present to really underscore the attention that this webinar and interest in ERC grants is receiving overall. And of course, you will have plenty of access to European Research Council national contact points all over Europe to answer your questions. I'm saying this to those based in the US and Canada because we don't have NCPs in North America. But if you happen to be joining us from Europe, from other continents in the world, it's very likely that you do have NCPs. So we'll also be very happy to share information on how to identify them and reach out to them. So to continue the spirit of screen sharing that Dr. Penny mentioned, I want to launch a quick poll with 2 questions. There's no right or wrong answer, but the idea here is for the speakers today, but then also you as among your fellow attendees to get a sense of who is in the audience in terms of your current career stage or your current interests. So I'm going to quickly launch this. No one has to answer anything, and we won't follow up or modify any of the presentation based on the answers, but you should be seeing 2 questions right now. Some of this is for those who are currently based in the US or Canada. So if you happen to be based in a different continent, you can skip that first question. But part of what we want to do is really see, is this initial level interest, are people quite interested in moving? And I can already see 3/4 of people, with a majority of people responding, really are interested in moving to Europe from North America. And then for those interested in applying to an ERC grant, of course, if you're here today, you may have been hearing about it for the first time this morning, yesterday, or in recent days, but it looks like very few people are not interested or not sure. So I hope just to echo what Dr. Penny said, and we can whet your appetite a bit further and give you information resources that will help you. So I'm going to end the poll. It looks like, I'm sorry if you couldn't see the results as I was narrating, but here's the percentages that you should be able to see now. And I think with that, we'll end and continue. So I will briefly explain EURAXESS services, and for those who are interested, we will have a webinar on May 27th. My colleague Daria will share a link in the chat momentarily. But 2 minutes just giving a quick overview and what we are. I know sometimes when you come across our homepage or you hear about us for the first time, it can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes we might have the appearance like we're consultants or we're a private entity. I want to clarify, we are 100% a European Commission project. The European Commission is the executive arm of the European Union. So we're an official EU project to help connect researchers based in North America, but we help people from all over the world to Europe, whatever that looks like, with a main mandate of connecting you to Horizon Europe, which is the EU's 7-year framework program for research and innovation. So to briefly maybe hit some of the touch points that Dr. Penny also mentioned, he talked about using an ERC grant to move to Europe and start a lab for some bottom-up research and for your own proposed project. When we say Europe, I want to clarify, we're not only talking about those 27 EU member states. This here is a list of countries that have EURAXESS national portals or websites that do sort of the equivalent of what we at EURAXESS North America do for the US and Canada. And you can use this as a handy shortcut to basically say, well, these are the countries you could do an ERC grant in. Some of these are all the 27 EU member states, plus about 20 other countries that basically access the Horizon Europe program on similar or equal footing to EU member states. So if you're interested in going from the US, from Canada, from anywhere in the world, including somewhere else in Europe, to a new European country, you could carry out your ERC project in Luxembourg, Malta, or non-EU countries like United Kingdom or Turkey. So this slide will be accessible, but I really do like people to have an idea of, we're talking about basically the entire continent and beyond when we talk about Horizon Europe. And when you have questions saying, well, I know I want to go to Portugal, I know I want to go to Spain, but I don't know how to pay into Social Security in that country, the EURAXESS national portal for that country will be able to help you. So they more or less, on these 18 different topics, synthesize information, guides, and they have EURAXESS representatives like us who are on the ground and will help you both in that country's national language, but then also in English. So let us know what country you're interested in with an email afterwards. We'll be very happy to connect you to our EURAXESS colleagues there. If you clicked yes to signing up for our flash note emails when you registered for this webinar, you'll start getting an email from us twice a month with a few little bits of news about R&I from Europe, and then job opportunities within Europe, research opportunities as well. So please let us know what you'd like to see. We're always happy to really tailor this content to our audience. And I just leave you here with this homepage screenshot of ours so you can get a little bit familiar with the visual layout. My colleague is also here on the webinar with us. She'll be closing out later today. So Dr. Daria Butner-Kajan, thank you for helping make this event possible alongside all the other speakers. This QR code will take you to our Flashnote signup page. But again, you don't need to do that if you already clicked yes on the registration page. Just like the ERC, we're on most major social media channels. So I encourage you to follow us and like us on all of these. And in particular on YouTube, if you subscribe, you'll automatically get the notifications when we upload new event recordings. And one friendly reminder, again, this is being recorded and slides will be shared. So you'll get all this information from us again tomorrow. So I'll close out here. And I have the pleasure now of introducing Dr. Thalyana Stathis of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, who is our gracious co-host of this event. Thalyana, thank you for helping to organize this and maybe laying the groundwork for what we'll see in the next hour and 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Jackson. And yes, so as Jackson mentioned, I'm based in New York City at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I'm the director of our career office there for postdocs. And I was really grateful that EURAXESS, the North America team at EURAXESS, Daria and Jackson, helped to organize this event because I knew that our postdocs are very interested in applying for ERC grants and either going back to Europe or moving to Europe for the first time and launching their faculty research career there. And so I was very excited we were able to offer this webinar to a broader community for everybody in North America who's interested in going to Europe for their research. We're really pleased by the large turnout for today. Now, I'm pleased to introduce that we actually have 3 panelists. 2 of them are here with us now, and the 3rd will be joining shortly. We have 3 panelists who are recent ERC Starting Grant awardees, and they're going to provide their personal testimonial on different topics that we will be addressing. As per Magnus, the ERC NCP will be going through his slide deck and his presentation. So on most of the slides, we'll take a pause and we will ask our panelists to comment and provide their testimonial about their experience when they were applying for the ERC Starting Grant. I'd like our 2 panelists who are with us now, and the 3rd will introduce herself later. I'd like our 2 panelists to introduce themselves briefly. Cassandra, if you don't mind, if we can start with you, could you tell us your current institution, where you're based now, and how long you have been there, and when you received your ERC Starting Grant, and finally, the focus of your research group?
Sure, happy to. Hello, everyone. So I'm Cassandra Ko. I'm a research scientist at the Institute Pasteur, and I've been at the Institute for 6 years. So it's where I perform my postdoctoral research. And I applied for the ERC Starting Grant 2024, which meant that I submitted in 2023. Did I answer all the questions, Thalyana?
The last question is, what is the focus of your research group?
Of course. So my focus is on the mosquito virus and how it impacts the transmission of arboviral diseases.
Thanks, Cassandra. And Alex, if you could also answer the same questions, where you're currently based, how long you've been there, when did you get your ERC Starting Grant, and the focus of your lab?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Alex Radziszewska. I'm based at the Institute of Cancer Research in London. I started here at the end of 2021 and I applied for ERC in the early of 2022. And then I started my grant at the end of 2023. Yeah. And my group works on the epigenetic regulation of cancer.
Great, thank you, Alex. And she had actually also done her postdoc at Memorial Sloan Kettering, where I work. And our 3rd panelist is Stephanie Chulek, who's at IRB Barcelona. I'll introduce her when she joins shortly. And so now, as I mentioned, the panelists will provide their testimonial while Per Magnus is presenting his slides about ERC grants in general, but we'll talk a bit more about the starting grant in particular. And now I'd like to turn it back to Jackson for a few other remarks before we get started with the presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for bearing with me. I'm trying to always spin the current speakers so the recording turns out nice and clean. So I think without further ado, I'd like now just to turn right back to, as everyone else has been mentioning, the Norwegian national contact point, not just for ERC grants, but also for Marie Skłodowska Curie actions, which are several actions of which we promote heavily the postdoctoral fellowships. So I think if there's certain opportunities that people who are 0 to 8 years post-PhD are interested in, please also contact us afterwards, and we can we can connect you to recent recordings and upcoming events we'll have on this. So for Magnus Kommendanvold, thank you very much. You are the special advisor at the Research Council of Norway. So I think those interested in Norway will be heavily encouraged to contact you afterwards. And if people have maybe follow-up questions, we'll do our best to get to all of these during the Q&A session. So I will now pin you. I'll let you know when I can see your screen share. And thank you for allowing Faljana to chime in at certain points during your presentation so we can hear from the great grantees.
Thank you, Jackson. Let me see. I tried to share, but I see no...
I see your full screen presentation just fine.
You see my presentation?
Yes.
Great, great. Okay, it doesn't show on my screen, but anyhow. Okay, thanks to EURAXESS North America and to Jackson and Daria for and Taliana for inviting me. Yes, I'm one of the many national contact points, and the national contact points in the different European countries and even beyond, we are there to help spread the gospel about the ERC grants. And we are keen on helping those who apply. And I understand that for you as Canadians or North Americans or whatever nationality who are listening in today, it might be a bit confusing to get to know the European Commission style. But I promise you, as Martin Penny mentioned, that there is a lot of help. And I will repeat some of the points of Martin and Jackson, but I think some things are important to be aware of and can be repeated. So let me see if I can make my screen change.
Yes.
This is, yeah, thanks, Jackson. This is just to underline that even though the European Research Council grants have a base in Europe, the European Commission and European countries are very keen that people who are located outside of Europe also take part in our activities. And this is why we try to promote these grants to you. So as you see, principal investigators, potential PIs based in non-associated third countries, that basically means not EU member states or countries associated to Horizon Europe, the EU framework program. They can take part in this. Okay, I don't have to go through all this. This reflects some of the things that both Jackson and Taliana and Martin have been mentioning. European countries, they are aware that they have a great potential for being leading in research. And with the global situation these days, almost all countries are trying to attract researchers from around the globe, but these days, perhaps particularly American and Canadian researchers to Europe. And as you can see, I just took a little bit of clips here from newspapers and from websites, and very many countries are now trying to put up funding to make it more attractive to go to Europe. I work at the Research Council in Norway, and as you know, Norway is not a big country. We have got 5 million inhabitants, and but we are my employer, the Research Council in Norway, has introduced a new grant in order to attract you guys to Norway. But this applies to quite a lot of countries. And on top of this, you have the European Commission with the Horizon Europe Framework Program for Research and Innovation, who are also putting in funding into this. So Martin mentioned the doubling of allowance for research moving to the EU. It actually means moving to the EU member states or the associated countries. So my message is basically, you are indeed very welcome in Europe these days. I think you need to understand the larger context. Horizon Europe is the research and innovation program of the European Commission. And it lasts from 2021 up until 2027 and has a budget of almost 100 billion euros. You can see that it has a structure, one pillar for excellent science, one pillar for the more collaborative research on topics, and one on the actions close to the market in the Innovative Europe pillar, as well as a base or a pillar at the bottom for equalizing the knowledge all over Europe. But as you can see, 1/4 of the Horizon Europe budget goes to the excellent science pillar. So excellent science is really hot in Europe. And Taliana, you just drop in. I can't see the number on my slide, so you just drop in whenever you want. So
Yes, thank you, Per Magnus. Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, our last panelist has joined. Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind unmuting, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, and then Per Magnus will continue. Stephanie, if you could share with us the institution where you're based and how long you've been there, and when you received your ERC starting grant.
Hello, everyone. First of all, can you hear me well? Does that work?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I'm Stephanie. I'm based in Spain at the Institute for Research in Biomedicine, or IRB, in Barcelona. And I joined the institute now pretty much exactly 2 years ago to open my junior group. And I applied for the ERC starting grant before I actually started my lab. So I applied around like 6 months before that in 2022. And then I got the ERC starting grant awarded in 2023. That was all the information, right? And yeah, and now I had a group of 8 people here in Spain. And, you know, the ERC starting grant really, really helped me and my lab to get started.
Thank you, Stephanie. And what is the focus of your lab, just so that we know?
So in general, we are immunologists. So we study innate immune cells with a particular focus on immunometabolism. So that is within the life sciences package, and that was LS6, if that is, you know, close enough, right? Because you know that within the ERC, they have different categories to, you know, sort of put science into categories. I don't know if you've talked about that so far, but I'm in the life sciences panel for immunology, which is LS6.
Thank you so much. Yes, I know that Per Magnus does have a slide on that, so I'm excited for us to discuss that topic. Thank you, Stephanie. And yes, Per Magnus, I would love for you to continue. I think after the end of this slide, I might ask the panelists another question.
Yeah, sure. I think it's great to have the panelists here, because you guys are the ones who really knows how this works. So it's always more convincing to hear you speak about your experiences. But okay, we'll get back to you. With this slide that you see right now, that's basically there to remind you of what has been already said. You know, scientific excellence is the only evaluation criterion. And that is rather special for the framework program in Europe, because in general, most projects are judged upon the ability of the PI or the PIs to implement the project, and the impact of the societal or whatever impact of the project. and also, of course, scientific excellence. But the ERC is special when it comes to only have one evaluation criterion, and I will get back to this soon. So, Taliana.
Thank you, Per Magnus. Yes, and this criterion is so essential that this is the main thing, driving your thought about whether or not you should be applying for the ERC starting grant or just ERC grants in general. So I wanted to ask the three panelists, why did you feel that in particular applying for an ERC starting grant would be an important next step in your career? And how did you determine that you could be a strong candidate for it and that it would be worthwhile to apply? So I'd love, actually, Stephanie, since you had just introduced yourself, if you wouldn't mind going first, why did you feel that the ERC starting grant in particular would be an important next step for your research career?
So to be very honest here, I mean, we have panelists from sort of all over Europe, but let's say research funding for Spain is not as strong as it is in other European countries. So then most of the, let's say, big research that we do in Spain is largely funded by the European Union. So that is, therefore, most researchers who are based in Spain clearly look at the EU for funding. Why I particularly applied for the ERC starting grant is because a lot of the research funding that is happening in Europe is sort of targeted to the treatment of diseases, at least in the biomedical and life sciences sector. So if you want to work in something that is a bit more basic, fundamental research, funding options are, let's say, rather scarce and more competitive. But because the ERC really awards funding for projects that are purely based on, like, let's say, the scientific idea, you don't necessarily need to have this I'm curing a disease focus. So therefore, I was fitting very, very well in this call because I'm an immunologist, but we actually do more basic research in that regard. Therefore, I applied for the ERC. And how I determined to be a strong candidate, well, that's a bit of a, let's say that's a bit of a tricky question to answer because, of course, when I applied, I didn't really know that, right? But I think what is important for everyone to know is that even if you apply to the starting grant, the ERC does not like to fund incremental research. So if you basically develop the sort of research line in your postdoc, then now you want to continue that in your own laboratory, that might not make you the most competitive of applicants for the ERC starting grant, because their whole idea is about doing, something, becoming independent from what you've done previously. It doesn't mean that you need to do something completely different, but I think they want you to develop a bit of your own research line and thinking. And because that's what I really wanted to do, therefore I thought that this was exactly the call that was detailed for me, because I didn't want to do exactly the things that I've done before, but diversify myself a bit. And that was the funding that allows you to sort of take this high risk, because it's all about high risk and high gain. And I think that's why I was fitting very well in the ERC starting grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Cassandra, do you have a different perspective on why this was the best next step for you?
Yeah, I think I could share something about my situation. So it's probably touching upon something that Stephanie has already mentioned, but something that makes the ERC starting grant mechanism very attractive is the fact that it's really, it has a high freedom in terms of its eligibility scope. Okay, like it's open to applicants for any nationality. And I do see this question it coming up in a few of the Q&A submitted questions, but I'll give you an example. So for example, I'm a non-EU citizen. My nationality is Indonesian. I'm applying from within Europe to perform the proposed project in my current host institute. And I also applied as a postdoc. So given those conditions, the ERC is actually one of the few grant mechanisms that I'm eligible for. I also like what Per Magnus has indicated on the slide here, which is that it's open to researchers of any age. And I should say this is biological age as opposed to PhD age. And certainly, at least I can speak for France, there are some funding mechanisms that actually has an age eligibility. One of my current conditions is that being a senior postdoc, I was naturally already at a point where I was thinking about my transition into independence, right? About starting my own line of research and my own research group. And again, as I've said before, there weren't many other starting grant mechanisms that are available as a postdoc. So usually starting grants might require you to already have secured a group leader position in an institute. How I felt I was ready to submit an application, I was fortunate enough that I found that I've already identified a research gap that is relatively understudied and timely. And so metaphorically, I would say that this is the research hill that I'm willing to die on. And if I could say so, I felt like I was in a good position, resource-wise and skills-wise, to address these research questions. So go for it.
Thanks so much, Cassandra. And yeah, and finally, Alex, if you'd like to comment as well, and then we'll turn it back to Per Magnus.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of the things were kind of said, but to answer the question about why is, I guess, very simply, it is a very, very prestigious grant. So I would encourage everybody who starts their lab in Europe to actually apply and go for it, because for your career, getting a grant like that means really a lot. So I think the second reason why is similar to Stephanie. My research is quite fundamental, basic research. So it's a great opportunity to actually get funding for basic research in Europe. In the UK, we have quite a few other starting grants available, but I think the biggest difference with ERC grant, I was not successful at the UK starting grants, I should say, and I think that was the big difference in terms of what criteria are used in evaluating the grants, because in many of the UK Research Council grants, it's the feasibility that counts, while the ERC applications, they have to be bold, they have to be really new, exciting, high-risk ideas, and I think my research just fitted better with that. So that's why I believe I was more successful at the ERC grants than at the UK grants. And how I knew that I was ready, well, I guess it's this time when you want to become independent, you are full of ideas, right? So to me, it felt like the best step is to write up this application, very ambitious, very high risk, high gain, as I said. Of course, you need to have first of the publications, you need to have a track record. Yeah, but all of this you already have when you are becoming a group leader. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Alex. And yeah, so Per Magnus, I'd love for you to, if there's anything else you wanted to say here, we can go to the next slide.
Thank you, Taliana, and thanks to the grantees. I mean, you are really, it feels like I'm talking about the rules and the, the administrative stuff, and you are decorating the Christmas tree in a way by filling it with the meeting. That's so great. So, but I think some of the some in the audience know the ERC grants well, some don't. So I need to go on explaining the basics. So as you can see, the ERC grants is support to individual principal investigators and his or her team to do a research project that moves the research front. So let me see, I think it was it Stephanie or was it Cassandra who talked about, filling a research gap and not doing incremental research. And this is what it's all about. You should really try to move the research front in your field. The grants are, of course, attractive because they are rather long and generous for 5 years for the individual ones and 6 years for the synergy grants. All areas are covered. I answered an answer on or a comment on LinkedIn today because someone was complaining that the humanities was forgotten. No, it's not. It covers all scientific areas. And the budget is based on the demand when the call closes. So there is no predetermined budget for any field. Scientific excellence is the evaluation criteria, and it is based on, of course, the excellence of the idea you want to do research on, and on yourself as the PI. And the ERC also encourages, of course, cross-disciplinary proposals, new and emerging fields. I mean, this is happening all the time, that we get new fields, unconventional and innovative approaches. Some of you talked about the high risk, high gain profile. Yeah, sure. But I think the ERC has actually toned down a little bit on the high risk. I mean, the project is supposed to create high gain, but if the risk isn't high, but the gain is potentially very high, you can still apply. So a little bit lower on the high risk part. Just to show you the types of grants that you can apply for. I guess that most of you are interested in the starting grants. You need to be able to show that at deadline, you will have successfully defended your PhD 2 years before. And this is measured against, an annual date, the 1st of January in each so-called work program year. This is perhaps the most important thing that you do at the start. You have to see that you are eligible. You can apply for up to 1.5 million euro for up to 5 years. And you have to dedicate at least 50% of your time on the project. And as Martin, I think it was mentioned, you have to spend at least 50% of your working time in an European member state or an associated country. So if you are more experienced than these 2 to 7 years after your PhD, you apply for the consolidated grants. That's 7 to 12 years after the PhD. Some of you mentioned that this is about, getting started as a leading researcher, a young but still a leading researcher. The consolidated grants, it demands a little bit more. So you need to show that you are actually consolidating your excellent scientific career. You can apply for up to 2 million euros for up to 5 years, and you have to spend a little bit less time on the project because probably you will also have other projects. And of course, for those who are more experienced, then you need to show when you apply for the advanced grant that you have a track record of significant research achievements in the last 10 years. And you can apply for a little bit more, namely 2.5 million euros for 5 years. But you have to dedicate a little bit less of your time on your project, 30%. So I think, Taliana, did you want to ask something?
Yes, actually, for Magnus, so the eligibility for the starting grant is that you would, within the year that you graduated or you got your PhD, it can't be more than 7 years that have passed when you're applying for the grant. And so if somebody has questions about their eligibility, maybe they took some parental leave, during their postdoc, if there's a question about that time frame, about within 7 years, who could they reach out to figure out, yes, I am eligible and this is when I can apply?
Yeah. First of all, you can reach out to me, to any of the national contact points. You can also reach out to research admin staff at European universities and institutes, because they are well aware of these rules. I think also it's quite easy if you go into the so-called work program for the call year. There you will see all these eligibility criteria. And you can also see that, for example, if you have gotten children, you will automatically be able to extend your eligibility period by 1.5 years, by 18 months. And you can also extend it if you have been ill or if you've been doing national service, etc. Basically, almost all that I know about the ERC grants can be found in the work program and in the so-called information for applicants. But if you want to discuss this, just get in contact. That's always better to ask for a confirmation from us, from the national contact points. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Pragnis, for offering that you were a very important resource. And I have just one other question, which is for the consolidator grants. If you choose to apply for that grant instead, if you're within 7 to 12 years after PhD, would you mostly be competing against those who have already started their own research group, at that point, or what if you are a postdoc? If you apply for the consolidator grant, are you still within the same category as anyone who applies who is already a group leader or a professor?
Yeah, it's the number of years after your PhD that determines what kind of heat you're applying in. But having said that, it's very important that all of you know that, let's say that you want to apply for a starting grant, but you realize that, oh no, I'm actually in the consolidator grant stream. The evaluators, the panels and the evaluators are instructed to evaluate you against competitors at your same stage. So if you have 8 years after your PhD, you are supposed to be evaluated against the level that 8 years after your PhD researchers have. So it's not as if the competition is very, skewed. It's you are competing against your peers at the same experience level.
That's very great to know. Thank you so much, Pragnis. Yeah, that was the last question for the slide.
Right. So I just want to mention this because, as Martin Penny mentioned, there is something called the synergy grants, where 2 to 4 principal investigators at all experience levels can apply to work together, and they have a research question which is, very new at the forefront of your research field, but you need actually the synergetic effect of the knowledge of both PIs or 3 PIs or 4 PIs. Then you can apply for a synergy grant. And especially for you guys in Canada and in the United States, one of the PIs in the synergy grant project can actually be based completely in the United States or in Canada or any other non-associated or member state. And then you can apply for up to 10 million euro for up to 6 years. So this is a great opportunity, but it's very competitive. And we see also that even though the ERC is very eager to also get not only advanced grant applicants to this, we see that the success rates for most of those who succeed, they are at the advanced grant level. But be aware, if you have an exciting idea and you are at the consolidator or the starting grant level, this might be an opportunity. So I won't mention the proof of concept because that's something that comes after the ERC grant. But just mention that the PI, in addition to the 1.2 million or 2.5 million euro grants, you can apply for up to 2 million euro in additional costs to cover startup costs, purchase of major equipment, access to large infrastructure, or other major experimental or fieldwork costs. So this applies to both the individual and the synergy grant types. So, okay, we actually talked a little bit about this. Be aware that it can be tricky to count days. Am I within the eligibility for this or that, or can I extend the eligibility? So whenever you are unable to calculate this yourself, get in contact with one of the national contact points. I mean, I have more excellent colleagues all over Europe than myself, and they will willingly help you. So don't be afraid to contact them. As for the required experience, when it comes to the starting grants, they have a minimum requirement that you should have at least one important publication as main author, or without the participation of their supervisor. So this is a minimum requirement. As for the consolidated grant, you should be able to prove that you have been able to do research and act independently as a researcher. And of course, the advanced grant, you should be an active and acknowledged researcher and have a genuinely great track record of significant research achievements. In the track record, you should list up to 10 research outputs that demonstrate how you as PI has advanced knowledge in your field, with an emphasis, of course, on the latest achievements. So Taliana, just stop me whenever you want.
Yes, Magnus, if you don't mind, I did have some questions about the defining the research maturity, and I'd love for our panelists to comment on that as well. Maybe if they could kind of give us some insight about what their CV looked like when they were applying for the ERC starting grant. It's required that you have at least one important publication as main author. So kind of what did your list of publications look like where you felt you were competitive to apply for the ERC starting grant? And I think I'll just go in the same order. Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Okay, so when looking at my CV, so if I purely put it down to publications, which is sort of what is written on that slide, when I applied, so I had a very strong PhD. I had the first author Nature paper from my PhD, which probably didn't hurt. But then at the time that I applied, my postdoc was actually not that successful on paper yet. So I had one first author paper in, let's say, an intermediate journal. Then I had 4 years into my postdoc. And at my time of application, which was exactly at the 7-year deadline, sort of my big postdoc paper was submitted only, but it wasn't accepted. So I submitted before my paper was accepted, So then I needed some of the information from that paper for my proposal. So I just needed to put, those figures in the proposal, which took away a lot of space. But that's what I did. I have to say that by the time that I was invited to the interviews, which is, oh my God, like 9 months after you actually send your proposal, at that point in time, my paper was accepted just 2 months before. And the interviewers actually knew that. So because I wrote in my proposal, look, this is submitted there. It's like second round of revision, so they checked that. But I was definitely selected for interviews before my paper was out. So don't wait until your paper is out to submit, right? Because that might actually then be a notch too late. When I applied, my big paper was not out at all. So I don't think that should hold you back. When it comes to sort of other merits, apart from publications on your CV, at that point in time, the amount of students that I supervised wasn't that high either. So I had one master thesis that I supervised, one undergrad thesis that I supervised, but I didn't have a PhD student that defended yet. So I was co-supervisor of one ongoing PhD thesis, but that wasn't defended either. Not at the time that I applied and not at the time that I actually got the grant approved. I didn't have any patents. In terms of on the innovation side, my CV was very poor because I do more basic science in a way. So I didn't have anything in that regard. So that apparently wasn't a way to hold me back either. However, what I did have, I had quite a strong record in writing literature reviews. And that, funnily enough, did give a few points in terms of recognition by peers in the field. Some of my reviews were quite highly cited, and this was something that was positively, commended on. And it even, showed some sort of leadership, apparently. I didn't think that was going to help. But that is sort of a summary of how my CV looked like at the time of application.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Yeah, very important insights here. I'll switch it up a little. Actually, Alex, if you wouldn't mind sharing about what your CV looked like in terms of publications or other key points when you were applying.
I can probably start with the timeline. So at the start of when I applied, I was a postdoc for 7 years. So it was sort of already at the limit, but because of the maternity leaves, my eligibility was extended. I was already 7 years in. I had 2 first author papers after my PhD, and I had 3 first author papers from my postdoc, but I did not have any Nature, Cell, or Science, not the top 3 journal papers. There were still quite strong publications, so at the level molecular cell, Nature Structural Molecular Biology, but no Nature, Cell, or Science papers. I also did not have any patents. I also did not have review papers. I think I had 1 review article, but I did have a lot of collaborative papers where I was not the first author, but where I contributed at different levels. So I had maybe more than 10 of papers in collaboration with not only scientists from my group, but also scientists from other labs and other countries. I think that is something also to consider to show how collaborative you are. I also had experience supervising students at different levels, from summer students to PhD students, maybe 5 or 6 students I supervised. So I also emphasized that in my application. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. And finally, Cassandra.
Yeah, so out of my PhD, I have 3 publications as first author, couple of others as middle authors. Out of my postdoc, at the time of application, I had 2 as first authors, and I should say that none of these are in the glam journals, Cell, Nature, Science. I think what helped my application quite strongly was the fact that I had already secured sort of like a transitionary funding as a PI. So I had experience, and I listed so in the CV as well, that I was able to conceive and lead a research project that was entirely my own, not my PI's. And something that I also try to market in my application is the fact that in every single paper that I worked on, I used a different approach. And so I was marketing myself as like a generalist researcher who could address many different research questions under a unifying and coherent theme, but as a generalist. I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and this is interesting to know that perhaps success in winning other grants before then applying for the ERC starting grant also shows that level of readiness for this next step as well. Thank you all for being so honest about what your CV looks like and your competitiveness. And yeah, I'd love to turn it back to Per Magnus now.
Thank you, and thank you to the grantees, because what they are mentioning is really important, that the ERC panels and the expert external evaluators, they are more interested in your idea. And as long as you can show that you do well, you've done, you've got things to prove that you are an independent researcher, then that might suffice. So great input. So I see the time is running out for us, so I need to be quick. So this is just to show you the evaluation criterion, scientific excellence, but be aware that you will be judged upon these elements that you find here. So the groundbreaking nature, the ambition, and the feasibility of the research project, but also when looking at you, your intellectual capacity, your ability to be creative, and the commitment of you to focus on your field of study. And these are the detailed evaluation elements, and you find them in, I think it's in the information for applicants that you can download from the when the call site is open. So this is basically what you are evaluated on. Before I go to the proposal structure, very quickly, you want to break in, Taliana, or should I just go through this?
I saw on the previous slide, there is a note about assessing feasibility. So my question is that assessed both in terms of the time frame of the projects that you're proposing, you know, how you would define what's feasible, but also in terms of the resources available at the host institution where you'll be conducting the research? Like, kind of, how do you make that pitch? It's feasible based on the timeline of the grant, but also what you know about the host institution, the resources available there.
Yeah, if you ask me, I mean, it's very important to be in close contact with the host institution when you apply, in order to get a realistic view of what you can do, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of facilities, what kind of administrative support will you get, etc. I don't know if any of the grantees would like to say something about this.
Would any of you like to comment? Either Stephanie, Cassandra, or Alex? Like, what did you discuss with the host institution when they agreed to be your host?
I can maybe comment on that, how it went for me. So what a lot of people reach out to me, and with a lot I mean 2 a week, to understand how I found an institution that would support my ERC starting grant application. Right. So that is clearly one of the sort of key features. In my particular case, I was sort of looking for the two, and I only found closed doors, I have to say, because people were, so, you know, sort of the general answer was, yeah, you know, once your paper is out, then we invite you and then we'll see and that. So one thing is obviously to find the perfect institution. The other thing is, the moment you get your ERC grant, you can take it and you can go somewhere else. You don't have to stay at the institution with whom you applied, right? To sort of just keep that in mind, because there are institutions, many European, so in Europe, there's no space, right? So they're like, you know, that is a big issue. And many research institutions in Europe, they simply don't have enough space to offer to everyone. So they cannot actually commit to then host you simply because they don't really have the space where to put you. So then for your application, you can maybe look for an institution that might not be the absolute top notch, because I don't think it is absolute key. As long as you can show that what you want to do, you can do it at that institution, right? If they don't have this, okay, if your whole application depends on one machine and this machine doesn't exist in the host institution, that's obviously a problem, right? However, if that is something that you could, you know, acquire, you have this additional budget that you can apply for, which is up to 2 million, I believe, if there's one key equipment that your host institution doesn't have. And this is something very reasonable. And I saw people actually getting that because they had that justified very well, right? To a certain extent. So in my particular case, I had my position secured before I applied because I went through an open call. So I actually had my, I signed my agreement with my host institution probably 2 months before the deadline of the ERC. And one of the conditions was that I apply, not that I get it, right? Then no, but that I apply. So therefore I did get quite a lot of support in terms of administration, so that they sort of helped me with, you know, they sent me a package with all the information of all the equipment that is available at the institution, and you know, how much things cost, because I think this, don't underestimate that. For me, simply making the budget was quite difficult because I didn't even know how much the salary would be, you know. So these are all things that the host institution, they have to provide you this information, because otherwise you simply do not know how much things cost. And then by working with this institution, you know, you sort of figure out if that's the right place for you to go, you know. So if you start very early with this application, you can sort of test that out. But I would say in my case, I couldn't have asked for more support from my host institution, and that really, really helped it along. Not scientifically, of course, right? But by actual some equipment that they had available, I adapted some of my ideas and my approaches just for my proposal to fit a bit better at that institute. I'm not sure if this was a good thing or not, but I actually had a key equipment that I needed and that you didn't have. So the plan was the institute wanted to acquire it. And that was, you know, projected to be acquired in sort of year 2 of my ERC. And that at the end went through because I had a backup plan. So in case there are problems with the machine, what I would do is collaborate with another institution who had it and where I had a previous collaboration. So this you can do it too. Okay. But I think that the institution is sort of helping you, especially if you're not there yet, to tell them, look, these are the units, these are the machines, and this is what things cost. I think that is fundamental. And without this, it's a bit of a monumentous mountain to climb.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You know, Alex, I know you were also in the same position. You had already started at the ICR and then you applied for the ERC starting grant. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of your discussions?
Yeah, I can add 2 things. I don't know if that helped or not in any way in my application, but there were 2 things I also highlighted in my application. One of them was how I would use the existing expertise of other groups in my department to help me in my proposal and in my aims to sort of try to show integration. That was one thing. And another thing is I've highlighted the support that I would receive from my department if I were to get the grant. For example, they would support me with adding another PhD student. And then I also described how this PhD student will work on which aspects of which aims. So yeah, I tried to actually highlight all the supports I got in the application. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. And finally, Cassandra, I know you're in a different position where you had applied as a postdoc. So what were you able to highlight in your application when you're applying as a postdoc?
Yeah, so I think I was worried about a different thing entirely. I was worried about being profiled negatively because I wasn't moving institutes, right? Because I think there's a certain image of, oh, like you do need to move around a little bit in science in order to expand your network, and generally moving institute is seen as a positive thing. But I think I did what is common, which is to really highlight why my institute would be the best place for the research and for me. So it's about the infrastructure, it's about the other research being done at the institute that could complement, not support, but complement. So to show that it's a fertile ground for cross-fertilization. I do want to also mention, to Stephanie's point, that sometimes the top-notch institutes, instead of looking to those, and I know that they're in the spotlight more because our friends in North America might be more aware of them. But if you could actually reach out and consider smaller institutes, they might be able to offer more extensive support. They might have their own grant support offices, and their support might actually extend to additional funding. So it's sort of like, yes, if you get the grant, we welcome you to start up your own group in the institute, and there's even additional funding to start up your own group on top of that, right? So that could be something very interesting. The problem with that is that it's not really something that you can search on Google, right? So, and maybe other panelists could add on to this as well, but I would say that perhaps the best way to find information about institutes, and this includes, whether there's a good grant support office, what kinds of infrastructure is available, what kinds of research are being performed, what's the mood and collaborativeness amongst the researchers in that institute, is to reach out to specific individual PIs and ask them what it's like to do research in that institute.
Fantastic points. Thank you so much to our panelists. And for Magnus, I'm really excited to hear more about the submission and interview process.
Yeah, thanks for all the good points. And I absolutely agree with Cassandra that you should reach out, not just to, the Ivy League universities. There might be very good pockets of excellence out in smaller universities and institutions that might even pamper you more than you would otherwise. Okay, very quickly on the proposal structure, because if you apply, you can see that your proposal will go through a one-stage submission and a two-stage evaluation. And the proposal consists of an administrative part, the part A, and you can see what is supposed to be put there. This is all these parts are very important. Then you also have to write at the same time the part B1. This is the part, the shorter part, where you find the extended synopsis. This is where you sell in your project, because it's a two-stage evaluation. So you need to get the panels to choose your proposal. So it's very important to work on the part B1 and the part B2 at the same time. As you can see, it's limited by a number of pages, and it's enforced very strictly. Then the detailed research proposal, where you describe the state of the art and the objectives of your project, and the use of methodology. And you can see that it's a total of 14 pages. And then you have also to add your funding ID, the grants and the research propositions that you have made and that you are making so that the evaluators are aware of this. And then you have the annexes, the host institution support letter, the ethic self-assessment, security, eligibility, etc., etc. So this is basically what the proposal looks like. You can download the template for the proposal structure from the call page. Very quickly on the ERC panels. So all fields of research are included. You select the most suitable for your proposal evaluation panel, and there are 11 panels on the physical sciences and engineering domain, 9 on the life sciences, and 8 on the social sciences and humanities. So the list of the panels and the keywords you can find in the work program, and I also have another slide with the names of the panels on the next slide. And I mean, it's very important that you take this seriously. And in some cases, if you have a cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary proposal, you might even have to choose a secondary panel, but this is only exceptional. So this is what, these are the different panels per today, as you can see. And I mean, you will get the slides afterwards, so you can look at this. And then very shortly on the evaluation process, the two-stage evaluation. So first, when you submit your proposal preferably well ahead of the deadline, your proposal will be checked for admissibility and eligibility. The panels that you saw, the panel chairs, will meet, and they will assign proposals to the different panel members. Then in step 1, there is a remote evaluation of the part B1, you know, the one where you sell your project. You want the panel members to look at your proposal as something that they want to fund and take to stage 2. Then they have a panel meeting, and they invite those who score an A, and it's a maximum of 44 proposals per panel. And then those who are receiving score A not invited, the B score or the C score, the proposal is rejected. Those who receive a score A and is invited to step 2, then the panels will use external referees where necessary for a remote evaluation of the parts B and the part, the part B1 and the part B2, the description of the resources and time commitment. And then you, at the same time, will be invited for the interview, which is kind of scary. And we get a lot of questions. Is the interview really as decisive as they say? Well, I would say yes, but not in the way that they will know on beforehand if you are a good candidate or not. They can, and when I say they, I mean the panels who interview, they can choose to rank you up or rank you down, depending on how you answer in the interview. And I've spoken to advanced grant applicants who prepared interviews, and they said that's the most important thing really to do once you have submitted your proposal. Prepare and you get the invitation. Prepare for the interview. It's really your very short chance of selling your project and getting funded. And then the highest ranked proposals will receive funding. For the Synergy Grant, it's a similar process, but it is into 3 steps. and they have a different kind of panel structure. I see that time is running, so these are just very short advice. Be aware that it's very competitive. The success rate will fluctuate each year because some years you have a lot of proposals, some less. It's a lot of work. You really need to be serious. Is the project suitable for an ERC grant, or is it more kind of a project that requires a lot of collaboration? Is it a collaborative project? You need to know if some of the grantees also said it, is this ERC stuff? And yes, so these are just advice for you to look at. There are other aspects as well. When to apply? Well, you have to have a mature research idea. And the timeliness, as I think Cassandra mentioned, is very important indeed. We know that most of those who apply will get turned down, but we also see that the success rate increases when you resubmit an improved proposal. So these are just some advice. Let me see, just to give you an idea of what kind of people are funded. You can actually go to the statistics in the ERC dashboard, look at projects, and then you can Google the CV of the successful applicants. So this is just a tip for you when you want to benchmark yourself, especially this is important for the younger ones or the not so experienced ones, that am I good enough or not? And coming from Norway, where we have something called the Janti law, everybody thinks, no, I'm never good enough. But you can benchmark yourself and see what did the earlier grantees have on their CV. Okay, so this is the call calendar for this year. And as you can see, there's only one deadline left. That's for the advance grant. But in July, the 2026 work program, which now is in the making, will be published. And then we will have the call roadmap so that you know when to apply. I would say it's very likely that the deadlines will be quite close to the deadlines that you see here, just 1 year ahead. So starting grants will probably have a deadline in October, etc., so that you know how to prepare. But in July, the work program is there. So I have only a couple of slides left, I think. I can do them very quickly, but Tariana, if you want to ask some questions to the grantees in connection with what I've said.
Absolutely, yep. So Per Magnus, actually, I had a few quick questions for you about some things you presented. Then I have one question for the grantees. So that you had one slide which says that you're allowed to resubmit. Are you allowed to resubmit only one time? And what kind of feedback do you receive so that you know you can improve your application the second time around?
Yeah. Well, all those who apply, they will receive what is called an evaluation summary report with comments from the evaluators and the panels. And this is really useful if you want to resubmit. You can resubmit as many times as you want, but there are resubmission restrictions if you don't get the high score. I don't have a slide on this, but you find all the resubmission restrictions in the work program. You can use the work program 2025 and just set it 1 year ahead in order to be able to know what is the limit when you call.
Thank you. And Magnus, another question for you. You had shown that there's, different types of panels based on the field of research. Are the names of the faculty who are on those panels, are they publicly available so the person can do research on who is actually, on their panel before they have their interview?
Yeah. No, the names of the panelists are not known except for the panel chairs ahead of the call. And the panels, they have 2 sets of panels per stream, 2 sets of panels for starting grant, 2 sets of panels and they alternate every second year. And also every year, approximately between 1/4 and 1/3 of the panelists are exchanged. And the lists, I know that the expert database is not actually working quite well now on the ERC website, but you still can find the lists of the panelists on the ERC website. I don't know if this is new for you, Martin, but I went into the expert registry today and I couldn't find it. Might be just down for the day. So that it is possible, but you can never be sure that the panelists will continue each year. They might be exchanged, but you can have an idea, yes. And you can also exclude, I think it's up to 3 evaluators if this is needed, if you have some sort of disagreement with an expert in the field. Yeah.
Great, that's good to know. Yes, I know we're close to time, but I had one more question for the panelists, if they don't mind answering that. And then, if they need to leave, we completely understand. But for our 3 panelists, also regarding the interview panel and that process of having the interview, as Magnus mentioned, like there's a lot of preparation that you should do when you get to that stage. So I'm curious, how did you prepare for the interview? In terms of practicing with a certain audience and the presentation that you had prepared. What advice do you have for preparing for the interview? And maybe again, if we could start with Stephanie.
Yeah, so preparing for the interview is I prepared a lot, especially to stay focused and not talk too much. So this is so you know yourself better and you know what your strengths are and what what you should probably improve on, right? So I did have my presentation, the first draft done probably a month before my interview, and then I did do mock interviews, a total of I believe 8, with different PIs at the institute. So I actually asked several of them, to sort of come together, and then we really tried to mimic the scenario, everything via video with the same platform to get used to that. And then I have to say that helped me a lot because I was actually a lot more nervous for the mock interview in front of my peers, right? Because I thought this might impact everything I do a lot more. And after having done, several rounds of those, I became so used to it and I knew my presentation so well that when it actually came to the interview, I could control my nerves very well. I actually have to say I'm one of the very few people who enjoyed the interview because it was like, finally I can give this presentation that I put so much work into. And I think that the panel, they sort of noticed this. And then what I would recommend everyone to practice a lot is don't only practice your presentation, right? Think about it. All these people, they actually know your proposal, right? Or they're supposed to know it. No, this should be sort of a teaser in a way to put it all on concept. I didn't put any methodology in there at all. It was just concept and why what I want to do is important. And I practiced a lot more the questions and how to answer them. So I asked so many people, ask me all sorts of questions that you can. And I particularly practiced answering those questions. People told me that no answer should be longer than 90 seconds. and it's better to answer as many questions as you can, because they will have so many questions for you that, you know, the farther you get, the better, to a certain extent. So then even that, you know, I had sort of clear thoughts on what I would say on which type of question. So don't put too much effort on your presentation. Try to really practice which questions you might get and how to answer them. I think this is the best advice that I can give to anyone. And then a lot of people ask me, which type of questions do you get? In my particular case, I only got questions on excellence and about the research proposal. I did not get a single question on administrative things or budget or feasibility or any of those things. Everything that I was asked was very much into, you know, why are you doing this like this? No, what's the idea behind that? These sort of questions, but very much focused on the research proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Cassandra, if you wouldn't mind also sharing tips for preparing for the interview and other questions that you got asked.
Sure. So I invested a lot of time to prepare for the interview. I absolutely memorized. I should also preface this by telling you what the interview is like. So for my interview, I applied to LS8, which is ecology, biodiversity, and evolution. And the details of the interview could differ from panel to panel. So I had a 10-minute presentation followed by 15 minutes of questions, and this is very sharp. They will cut you off. They will absolutely stop you at the 10-minute mark, and they will just kick you out of the meeting room after 15 minutes of questions. So I absolutely memorized my 10-minute speech and presentation because you have a lot of information that you want to present. And if you just trip up, you know, that's like really precious seconds that is being lost. I also want to echo some points that Stephanie brought up, which is that in the end, I actually quite enjoyed my interview experience. And I really think that the Q&A is also the heart of the interview, because this is where the panels will have access to the reviews from the experts. And that's where they're going to ask you to clarify or address concerns that either they or the expert reviewers have brought up. So it's really your chance to defend the grant. I also received the same kind of general comments. So really keep your answers short and concise. Stephanie mentioned 90 seconds. I got 60 seconds per answer. I also got told that if you could answer between 10 to 12, you're good. So it's really about answering as quickly as possible so that you can address as many questions as possible. In my presentation also, I spent a good 2 minutes showcasing myself, my CV, my dream team, and my long-term research vision. So it's a little bit about an investment also on yourself, like why you are a researcher worth funding as much as your project. Something else I want to mention, so the type of questions, I also only got questions about the science, so about the feasibility, about the impact, how I see it rolling out. But I have heard from other ERC grantees that sometimes they could ask you PI type questions, and that means questions like, how are you going to ensure that you're going to hire the best people for your team, or management type questions. And usually that's a good sign actually, because it means they've run out of scientific questions to ask you. There was something else now that I wanted to mention. Oh, who I practice with. So yes, for mock interviews, I practiced 6 times. I was lucky enough to be able to practice with past ERC grantees. So they know the structure of the interview. They know what kind of questions I might get thrown at. I had to change a lot how I'm answering the questions. In the very beginning, I was waffling a lot. Do not answer the questions in the way that I'm answering it now, you know, really keep it to 60 seconds. So there was a lot of changing the style in which I'm used to discussing science, because it's quite different. It's not at all like how you would answer questions at a conference or at a seminar. But really also another positive sign that I was told is that if the Q&A felt as if it was a discussion between peers, that's a very good sign. And that's definitely how I felt.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cassandra. And finally, Alex, can you tell us about your interview experience and how you prepared?
Yeah, so a lot of things have been said. So my panel was LS2. It was very similar, 10 minutes interview, around 15 minutes questions. So for me, it was about 8 months from the submission to the interview. So it was quite a long time. So I tried to use that time to actually improve on the research goals. So try to get a little bit of more data to show the feasibility. In particularly, I had one quite high risk aim, but it was also a very exciting one. So I really worked on that to try to get some feasibility, like proof of principle before the interview. And I think that this really what helped a lot, because most of the questions were on science, and I would say 80% were around the feasibility. So it's really a lot of questions how you would actually deliver on the aims. So I practiced with different group leaders at my institute. So I had 2 or 3 mock interview panels. They were quite different, and oftentimes you get very different advice from people, and I think many find it confusing which advice actually then to incorporate. So that was quite challenging, because sometimes it would even be the opposite advice that you get, but then you just have to go with the gut in the end, and then try to really think about making your presentation that will be understandable to everybody. Yeah, so I was also asked something about my main competitors in the field and how I would be different from them. I also spent maybe around 2 minutes as well to highlight my strengths, my technical expertise, also my experience in supervising people. So I would say I had 1 slide on that. And yeah, so I got the same advice, very short answers to everything. And the presentation is very short, 10 minutes. So I would probably advise not to put too much data, too much information, too much animation. So my slides were very, very simple in the end. And they became progressively simple as I prepared, because when you practice, you see that it's just too much sometimes that we try to put into these slides. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much to the panelists. And I just wanted to share with everyone that a note from Martin Penny, who had presented in the beginning, that the list of panel members is published on the ERC website for reasons of transparency, but potential applicants or potential host institutions must not contact the reviewers. So you are aware of their names, but you are not allowed to contact them. And yes, so Prabagnis, I think that we have a few final slides to go through.
Thank you, Taliana. I'll be very quick, and it's very good that you repeated what Martin said in the chat, because you don't want to be kicked out because of breach of research integrity. Okay, I mentioned it. This is something that you can look at yourself. These are the results of the 2024 step 2 evaluations. So I don't have to go into this. I've ringed out the most important things. This shows the funded proposals by gender and year since the PhD. As you can see, it's the ERC Executive Agency slides. Because I think it's important for you to be aware that the success rates are basically quite equal throughout. So these are the starting and the consolidated grants for 2024. So what's next? Well, as I mentioned earlier, start preparing early. You can check the annual deadlines. They come. There's an annual work program coming in July. Contact your preferred potential host institution, because at least in Norway, and I know in most of the European countries, getting an ERC grant and an ERC grantee to their institution gives a lot of prestige, and they can give you help. do discuss your idea without revealing, you know, the golden parts with peers or with your research group. And Martin also showed the ERC classes on YouTube, which are excellent. And I'm just one out of many national contact points. Of course, all of you are welcome to send me an email, but you know, if all of you do, I'll be drowned. So please do find the national contact point in your country, the country of your preferred host institution. When you prepare, when you're thinking about moving to Europe, the EURAXESS website is excellent. It's a lot of, you know, more practical information. What does the research landscape look like? How do I get my kids to kindergarten, etc., etc., etc. Soon there will be an ERC National Contact Point Network. Since I work also with the Mari Skłodowska Cure Actions, the MSCA, I know that that network is excellent when it comes to not just helping other NCPs, but in fact also helping potential applicants with information. And do follow the ERC social media. I've put an invitation link to the WhatsApp group, etc. And if you want to be in contact with me, you can contact me on LinkedIn, or you can follow me on Blue Sky, but not on Twitter because I quit Twitter. So I wish all of you the best of luck when it comes to applying, and you should know that you are more than welcome to come to do your excellent research in Europe. So thanks for me.
Thank you, sir, so much, Per Magnus. Actually, thank you, everyone, Diana, for getting this great group of researchers who have shared some different perspectives. I want to briefly remind everyone once more that we'll be sharing all of this afterwards. So please don't hesitate to just sit tight, wait for your inbox to populate with that message tomorrow. Everyone's been very generous with their time. As you can see with the number of submitted questions, you should be able to access the answered tab and review some of our written responses to others' questions. There is significant interest here. I hope we can leverage this turnout today and the number of questions that we'll be sharing with management to really design more webinars like this in the future, including tailored to your feedback to focus on people's fields of interest. In certain cases, I'm happy to also do non-ERC webinars on people's countries of interest. There's a deep network of speakers throughout Europe who are passionate about attracting people, whether it's to their institutions or to their countries or to Europe as a whole. But I think we've done our part in this first hour and 45 minutes to really impart the message that Europe's doors are open to you. So if I can maybe abuse the generosity of the others and see if we can tackle 2 or 3 or 4 quick questions live, in addition to all the ones that have been answered in written format. And then from there, I'll do my best to try to also compile some answers to some pending questions. But what I will ask is that if we haven't answered your question, to please email us at EURAXESS so we can follow up, because some of these have been submitted anonymously. So I don't have a clean and fast way to immediately get everyone an answer afterwards. So Per Magnus, if you have a few more minutes, I might be able to synthesize a few of the questions that I've been seeing asked by multiple people that haven't been answered yet. One might be, if I can call it this, the quote unquote order of operations. So people understand they need to have a host institute somewhere in Europe, which is where they'd carry out this research. But what's the sort of order of things in terms of when do you find a host institute? What is needed at the time of application? Does it start as something non-binding, and then once you receive the grant, does that turn into a binding job offer? Or basically, I think people are really looking for guidance to understand how they can fit into these deadlines, but make sure they have what they need in advance. I can clarify, I can read verbatim some of the wording, but I think hopefully I've done a good job of generalizing some others' questions about securing a host institute and what is needed in the beginning.
Well, if I can start, I would say that it's different when it comes to attracting researchers from outside of your country or outside of Europe. I would say that it's very important to start to find a good host institute that is willing to support you, willing to let you use their facilities, etc., and then develop the proposal from there. I mean, they have to hire you as soon as you get, I mean, you basically get the grant. That's what they are promising to do with the host institution support letter. Yeah, but I guess that perhaps some of the grantees can tell what they did.
Yeah, I might invite any one of the three grantees to, if someone, Alex, if you want to share your experience.
I
see
already
them.
was at the institute when I was applying, so it was much easier in my case. I didn't have to match and arrange it remotely. So yeah, probably cannot advise on that.
And of course, most larger universities, they have some sort of grants office that you can contact. And they will be able to tell you if they have an environment which is suitable according to your basic idea. Yeah.
I might move on then for Magnus to ask for people who are right on the cusp of starting grants and consolidator grant, or who are just over 7 years, but then there's the parental leave, there's the illness, there's the ability to adjust the time of your PhD age. Do you have advice? Are there sort of a common best practice or thought on which is better? I don't know if people apply a certain strategy to this, or if there's a certain approach.
Well, first of all, you need to get documentation on this. I mean, if you have children, that might not be so difficult, but other reasons why you should get your eligibility period extended, then you need to present documentation. So get hold of it as soon as possible. Also, if there's a sort of doubt when you got your PhD, successfully defended your PhD, get documentation if it doesn't say on the diploma as soon as possible. So yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to go through here. We got a lot of questions that come in following every other question, and some of these I think we've done our best to answer already. Do you have any comments on the pandemic in particular and how that might affect people's eligibility windows? With regards to institutions shutting down for some period of time, or anything along those lines?
The ERC has, in a way, changed how the CV can look. In what has affected you, not just during the pandemic, but due to other reasons, you might describe in your CV, and the panelists and the external referees will then have a look at this and should take this into consideration when looking at what you were able to do during, let's say, the pandemic, because naturally there has been delays in whatever collaborations and publications, etc. So yeah.
Please, Cassandra. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to flip back to the question before this one and share a little bit of interesting anecdotes. So in terms of when you graduated from your PhD, so I graduated from an Australian university, and in Australia, we don't do PhD defenses. And I think for many countries, the date at which you obtain your PhD, the date at which you are conferred your doctorate, is the date of the viva or of the defense. And so in my case, I actually had to go back and contact my university and get them to release a letter that says, we don't do defenses. Her PhD conferral is this date as is stated on her diploma. Thank you.
Yeah. And the last annex of the work program actually concerns this. So you should read the work program, and there you will see what counts really.
Stephanie, please.
I am sorry, can I pick up on that when it comes to PhD eligibility? Because I actually had a problem with that during my application. And I was in touch with the eligibility office of the ERC because there was a problem. And that is, in the year that I applied, what they ERC considers that your PhD defense date is not that trivial. In many, or let's say in most European countries, you get like, your PhD day is actually the date of your defense. But in, let's say, the Commonwealth countries, let's call it like that, no, which includes, no. So I did my PhD in the UK. And there, as I believe in Canada and probably in the US, you sort of defend your PhD, but that doesn't mean you get it. So you defend it, and then you have to correct your thesis. In my case, I needed to print it again and submit it again. So there was quite some distance of 3 months between the date of my, actual defense, or what they call viva, and the date of my PhD award. And one of them was before the deadline, 1st of January, right? And then the other one was after. So therefore, the eligibility office actually came back to me and told me, look, sorry, you defended your PhD in November, so you are out. You can't, you're not eligible in there. So then this took quite a significant amount of, my heart. And I think all my hair turned white back then, no? So, and it was a lot of forth and back with my university. And at the end, we managed to establish that what they would consider as my PhD defense date was the date in which my examiners accepted the corrections to my thesis, which turned out to be the 7th of January. So that day, it was almost like winning an ERC grant, just being able for somebody to actually read all the documents that I've prepared. Okay, so they are fight for it because they are reasonable people, just sort of, listen to these things, but have a very, very close look at, in your particular case, and in the particular country where you defended, what your defense date or what your, let's say, PhD date is, because depending on the country you're coming from, that could cause you quite some upset.
Thank you for the on-the-ground experience, as Magnus has also been commending. I think in the interest of time, I think at some point we have to call it. So I'd like to say that for those who email me the unanswered questions, I'll look forward to doing my best to answer them afterwards, and also liaising with NCPs based in Europe. I want to thank everyone for being here. Daria, my colleague, will close that out. So Talyana, at this point, I'd like to invite you, if Per Magnus has no other follow-up, or if none of the other grantees have any experience they'd like to share. Maybe you can close it on MSCC's side. Martin, Penny, if you have any final words as well, it's been extremely generous of you to stay this whole time. And then I want to thank my colleague for closing it out for all of us. So as I see the head nods, I'll think I can turn to Talyana safely then.
Thanks so much, Jackson. I want to thank all of our panelists, and to Martin and Per Magnus for your presentations, and also to Daria and Jackson for helping me to organize this event. And for everybody who's listening, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best place to connect with me. And I've also been following all of our panelists and our speakers today on LinkedIn as well. And I had seen some of those exciting announcements that Martin had talked about. I had seen them also on LinkedIn yesterday too. So I think that's a great source of information. Please find me there, and I'd be happy to stay in touch. And thank you again to all of our speakers.
So thank you, Daria, for closing us off here.
Hi. I was just expecting whether Martin has some remarks, if he wants to.
Look, Daria, thank you. I'm happy just to say some remarks, and I'm very pleased to see the turnout in this webinar, and also the level of interest. It's a good note in terms of the interest from when we had the polls at the start, in terms of the number of people who are potentially interested in applying. We really very much welcome that, and we look forward to seeing your applications in due course.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you, Jackson, for the moderation. As always, it was great, and many thanks to Martin, Talyana, Per Magnus, and our 3 awardees. I think this event, with the participation of 3 awardees, is a bit different than the previous ones, because we have them from the UK, Spain, France. Thank you, Alex, Cassandra, and Stephanie, for your time. I know that you're so busy with your research. And I would like to remind also that the recording of this webinar, because many of you ask whether you're going to get the slides, yes. And you can also reach out to this recording on our website and YouTube channel. So as we mentioned in the chat, please visit the ERC and EURAXESS websites and social media, follow the social media channels. You will all be updated about all the events, deadlines, and there are some new opportunities that might be from the, the European Union. And it's not only the funding opportunities, it's also about collaboration opportunities for other, opportunities as well. And for example, at the end of this month, as Jackson mentioned, we have another online event. It's about EURAXESS services. So, applying and getting these grants is great, but we also need to be updated about other information, how to get there, how we are going to relocate them or move to that country. We need a lot of information. So this event is for all of you who are interested in a PhD or postdoc in Europe, looking for a faculty position and also a job in the industry. So you will get a lot of information about EURAXESS, our website, and also the EURAXESS services. And the interesting part is that we will also host EURAXESS Spain to talk about about moving the EU and wider European neighborhood, like for the next step in your research career. So it will be another interesting info session. So I would like to thank you all again, because when I see the number, I think it's great that the interest to Europe as a living and research destination is more, especially these days. So please stay connected with us and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.